Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Armitage.
I'm going to have a very busy countdown.
Welcome to the Sunday edition of Canada Games 89.
A game that we'll be watching very, very closely because it should be a good one.
The competition was expected to be a little stiffer, and this it was. The Cubans have 11 fighters going for gold in 12 weight categories.
Si, senor.
Kathy, where does the 1,500-meter fit?
You've got to be pleased to be in that group.
While walking through the athletes' village here at the Lethbridge Community College, I came across a charming bunch of girls from Newfoundland. And we'll let Heather Young act as their spokesman. Heather, where are you all from?
St. John's.
And what events are you competing at here in the games?
Synchronized swimming.
And how are you doing?
As well as we hope, and we're having a lot of fun.
That's good.
So it's the rejuvenated Canucks against the bruised and battered Dallas Stars. Ron?
So good. Steve
so
Armitage retiring after over half a century of Canadian sports broadcasting. He just wrapped up his assignment in speed skating at the Beijing Olympics, not swimming, as we talked about on Friday. I don't know. We could go on and on about Steve, BC Sports Hall of Famer, where Canucks broadcast. Everybody talks about the Olympics. Don't forget Canada Games, Lions Games, CFL. If Briars, if it was Canadian, Steve covered it, and he joins us now as he retires from this business of ours. Steve, thanks for doing this. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, Donnie, and Rick, it's good to see you. It's been a long time.
Yeah. What have the last few days been like when your retirement decision became public? What's that been like?
Pretty hectic. Heard from a lot of people I hadn't seen or heard from in a long, long time. A lot of friends and colleagues that I worked with down through the years sent notes of congratulations and said some really nice things. If I had known that I was that good down through the years, maybe I wouldn't have quit. Maybe I wouldn't have retired.
Asked for a raise or two. So how does a kid born in England, raised in Victoria, I hope I got all this right, Steve, raised in Victoria and Dartmouth, go from being a St. Mary's College, St. Mary's University quarterback to a career spanning over 5 decades in broadcasting? How does that happen? Where did it all begin?
Well, I started in Halifax in radio. I was the sports information director at St. Mary's, and I was doing press releases for the Huskies after playing for them. And one day the CBC called and said, how would you like to come to work for us? Write the late night sports, not go on air, but write the late night sports. That was in the spring of 1965. I signed my first contract with the CBC. And of course, I did more radio work and then eventually television. I did the Canada Summer Games, and you guys probably don't remember this, but they were held in Burnaby, New Westminster in 1973. I came out to do those games, and lo and behold, got home. 2 weeks later, there was a call from Ted Reynolds saying, apply for the job in Vancouver, which I did. And in October of 73, I was doing the late night sports in Vancouver.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we remember those games, Steve, because the Canada Games pool is still around. Last time I checked, anyway, in New Westminster. Do you remember your first moments on the air? Were you comfortable? Did you like it right off the bat?
Absolutely not. I was terrified. I was petrified. I always thought I sounded like a choir boy. You got to remember, those were the days of John Badham and Don Chevrier, who always sounded like they were coming from. And I always thought I sounded like, hello, everybody, it's Steve, and I'm going to be telling you about sports. That's what I thought I sounded like. So I was a little terrified in the very beginning. But the more you do, obviously, the more comfortable you become. And eventually, I found an area, a zone that I could work within and had some fun.
Steve, the one thing I've always loved about you, the enthusiasm, the passion. It wasn't a job for you because you loved it so much. Just talk about that, because not everyone's got that in our industry.
Well, I was associated with so many athletes down through the years, and the fun thing was watching them grow up in front of me as juniors and as highly rated amateurs and as provincials. A good example is Bob Leonarduzzi. I watched Bobby when he played Division 6 in the BC Soccer League, and I watched Bobby when he came back from Reading in playing professional hockey, and throughout his career with the Whitecaps. So I got to know a lot of these athletes, and when they competed, whether it was at a World Cup, a World Championship, a National Championship, a Canada Games, an Olympics, I had a stake in it in a way, and I felt for the kids. I knew what they had done, how they had sacrificed, and so when I got to call their races and their competitions, I really felt for them, and that emotion, that passion came through because I knew them and I cared about them and I wanted them to do well. So that's where it came from.
The other one is multiple sports. In Canada, it's all about hockey. So you do tons of sports at the Olympics, the CFL, curling. I mean, there wasn't a sport you couldn't cover. Like, you didn't just say, okay, I'm going to focus on hockey, but you went after every sport, which you don't see that much of anymore.
Well, I got a break. I was one of the few guys, along with Don Whitman, who was allowed to do Hockey Night in Canada the CFL. And I could cross over. Unfortunately, a guy like Bob Cole and Dave Hodge were so associated with Hockey Night in Canada, when they tried to do anything else, they wouldn't be accepted by the viewer or the listeners. And I was fortunate. I was able to spread my wings and fly to other sports, mainly because guys didn't want to do them. I tell the story of 1982, the World Cup of Soccer. I had done soccer in '76 at the Olympics in Montreal, and they were looking for somebody to do the World Cup in Spain. It had never been done for home television before, and they were looking for somebody to go and do it out of Madrid, off tube, in a booth. We did 29 games in 27 days. So those kinds of things led to my doing speed skating. For example, in 1990, I got a call from the executive producer, a guy that you may know. He was the voice, a longtime voice of the Red Wings, Kenny Daniels, said that doing speed skating was like watching paint dry, which it can be from time to time. So I got a call from Mike Brannigan, who said, get your butt in here. You're doing speed skating for 2 hours on Saturday. So that's how it started. And I did speed skating for 32 years.
Wow.
For all of us, I think, Steve, sometimes our most favorite events to cover or to work aren't necessarily the biggest events. Maybe that's the case with you. But for you, do you have a favorite event through all the years that you worked in this business, a most memorable event for you?
Oh, of course, calling Katrina LeMay Dones, who was Canada's chef de mission in Beijing, calling her 2 gold medals. Up until 1998, I had never called a gold medal at the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
And of course, she wins the 500 meters in Nagano. I call it. 4 years later, she wins her second gold medal. So I get back to back. But you talk about sports and aren't really recognized, and athletes who don't get recognized. I was covering the World Triathlon Championships in Brisbane, Australia, actually on the Gold Coast of Australia. And a young girl from Kelowna by the name of Joanne Ritchie won that event. Her mother was quite sick in Kelowna. So my cameraman, Pat Bell, who you probably know, had a cell phone.
Yep.
And he gave Joanne the cell phone. She wrapped herself in the Canadian flag and made that call to her mom. Wow. When she came into the stadium, which the Aussies had built fully expecting Australians to sweep the podium, both men and women. When Joanne came in, it was such a great moment. I've never forgotten it, and it's one of my favorite moments in sport. Ironically, there's another moment. I did the women's hockey final out of Sochi for CBC Radio. I was told I was going to do it 8 hours before I did it, and that was one of the biggest sporting events I can remember. The Canadians were down 3-1, tied it up, went to overtime, and of course they scored the winner and won the gold.
What's retirement going to be like for you, Steve?
Different. I've always had something to look forward to in terms of an event. And as you both are aware, there's a lot of preparation that goes into these events. You don't just show up, turn the red light on and go.
Yeah.
So I'm going to miss that. I play a lot of golf here in Nova Scotia, and I'm going to be doing that this summer. After that, I really don't know. I'd like to teach somewhere. I'd like to be able to pass on some of the experiences and some of the things that I know about the business that I'd like to tell younger guys who want to get into broadcasting. So if there's anybody out there listening to your show, needs a lecturer and needs a teacher, I'm your guy.
Steve, we do.
Help out this guy right here.
Hey, we need all the help we can get, Steve.
Listen, I've been listening to Donnie Taylor and watching Donnie Taylor. I remember when he did the late night sportscast. I'm listening to Rick Dollywall on every radio station I can think of. You two guys do not need my help.
So Nova Scotia is going to be home, Steve?
Yes, I have a cottage on a lake. If you take the dime out of your pocket and you look on the back of the dime, you'll see a schooner.
Yeah.
And that schooner is the Blue Nose. And the home port for the Blue Nose is Lunenburg, which is on the coast of Nova Scotia. And I'm about an hour from Lunenburg, the home of the Blue Nose.
Steve, we could go on and on. We're gonna let you go, but let me just say this: so many people in our business look up to you. It didn't matter what event it was, and I'm sure you've had all sorts of accolades thrown your way. But let me just say this: when you did an event, speed skating, it sounded important, sounded more important. If Steve Armitage was there, it must be a big deal. And all the best, Steve. All the best in your retirement, and thanks for all the memories. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you, Steve, so much.